Now the first thing we're going to do is start on the timing belt. It's one of those things that you can kind of forget about. It's kind of hidden in there, you don't always see it, but it's one of those items that for a split second.
If it fails, you're in trouble.
No, you're more in trouble, you're done. That engine is sauce. So what we're going to do is get in here and dig this out. We got the cover loose, we got that damper off, and show you what all is going on. Now, what's neat about this car, it's a V6, 3.2 liter, but it's a more complicated belt than most of us are used to seeing on a little 4-cylinder. Now check it out. We got down here, we have the crank. So we've got, a cog down here, and it's going to drive this belt. So it's going to pull this belt down because the engine's turning clockwise. So it's pulling this side, right? So it's going to right up here. It's going to drive this cam and this cam. Now we're going to run down here, so we got plenty of grip around, and we're going to run down here to this little idler and back up and across. Now we've got a tensioner here to provide the right tension on that belt, and back down to the crank to do it all over again. Now, all of that has to be just in sequence and spot on the money, because you take a valve and hit it on a piston.
Ooh, trouble, man.
Bad news.
And the tough thing about when you're doing this, we got some particular tools that help us keep this phasing intact, because if you get it out of phase and some of the valve train moves, the crank moves, then you're in all kinds of trouble.
That's right.
So we'll show you some of that. And another thing we're going to get into, since we have it here and exposed and this far down, everybody that we talked to said a good thing to do at this point is replace the water pump.
So, definitely. You've already got a lot of miles on it, and it may still be good, but you've already got labor pulling all this stuff out. So you're right there. It's real easy. All you got to do is throw a single part at it. Well, also, in the order of operations, we'll go ahead and do the water pump first, because more than likely it's going to dribble some cooling down. So we don't want to dribble coolant on a brand new belt. So let's go ahead and do the water pump, and we'll get onto that belt. We'll get on moving.
All right, now we got this old water pump out. Right out of the gate, you could tell it had some binding and a lot of stuff going on in the bearing. And then you see on inspection, you can see this weep hole where it was actually leaking outside of the pump. Now, had we put a new timing belt on without replacing this water pump, then you could obviously tell that some of that coolant would have got on and ruined the belt. So it's a good thing that we changed the water pump now. Now let me show you a couple things about when you do the water pump, some tricks that might help you out. Now you see it's an O-ring, so you don't want to put silicone in here. What a lot of guys do and a lot of techs do is we'll still put silicone in here. Well, this seal inside this water pump is actually cooled by the actual engine coolant. So you don't want that RTV or that silicone in there, because what happens, it gets tied up in this bearing and then acts as a ribbon. It wounds up in there, and that way you can't keep it cool, and you'll end up having a faulty water pump again. So a good tip, maybe put some Vaseline in there. This one's holding in pretty well. So we'll clean up this surface, get this mated back onto the block, and then get into the timing belt. All right, Kev.
You got yours locked in?
I think it's pretty much locked in, man.
All right, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find TDC. Now, you're going to do that by, rotating the engine around. You've got a mark on your crank, and there's a little mark at the very bottom of the timing cover, and those will line up. Well, that could be TDC, or it could be 180, 180 degrees off at top dead center on the exhaust stroke. But the way to tell, it's real easy. You've got a notch in your cover, and you've got a little notch in each one of these cam gears. On all 4 of them, and they're all going to align straight up and down. Now, a belt is going to stretch over time, and a chain, timing chain, it'll stretch and wear over time. So what's kind of interesting is I can mark my crank at TDC, and I can follow here, and the whole way along this belt, this one lines right up with the mark. Right. This one's sagging a little bit further.
As you go more on this side, it sags just a little bit more and even further on the final one.
Yeah, so you can see the actual wear and stretch on the belt. So another reason to replace it other than just pure failure. Now, the one thing we need to do is we need to lock these cams in, because there's these lobes, with springs and valves pushing on top of those cams. So you rotate the cam to a certain position, a cam lobe is driving that spring, and if I were to release that belt, that cam might roll back, and this one might roll forward, and this one might move over here and over there.
It messes all that phasing up, and then you have a really difficult time aligning everything back up.
Yeah, sometimes you'll see maybe a slot in the back of the cam, and you can put a bar in, to lock both cams together. Here's a neat little tool. You can adjust it, and it'll grab the teeth and lock cams in.
Slides right in the cogs, bites down on it on both the pulleys for both sides of the banks, so that way it's not going anywhere. It's locked into place. So when we slide that belt off, take the tension pulley off, so it makes it a lot easier lining up.
Yeah, so we're set. We got TDC, cams are in position, All we gotta do now is loosen up our tensioner, our little idlers here, and we're ready to slip that belt off and go to brake. Hey, welcome back. Now we're about to put our new AC Delco timing belt on our old 2003 Cadillac, give it some more life.
Yeah, man, you can see I got the old bracket off. Here it is. You can see some of the wear that it was causing and some of the little fur balls and debris that was coming off the belt.
Build-up of worn belt stuff in there.
Cool thing about this AC Delco kit is it comes with a new bracket, tension pulleys, belt, everything.
Yeah, so we've got 2 idlers, and they're both on cams. We'll show you how that works, and we've got a tensioner to get the right belt tension. So that's all installed. Now we're gonna start installing the belt. So we've got direction arrows, which is going in the direction of the engine rotation. We've also got some timing marks to kind of give you an indication that you've got everything timed right. You're not off by a tooth. So I'm gonna line those up with the notches that we kind of showed before. So I've got these 2 cams, and I'm gonna start wrapping it around. And I'm gonna loosen the eccentric on my first idler down here and wrap underneath the crank. Okay. And I'm gonna have to get under there at some point and just double check that I've got the right timing mark from the belt under the bottom of that crank on its little mark. And then we'll work our way up. And then the tough part is just getting it to slide over the gears, even though we've got it untensioned. You got it there?
Yeah, man, it's coming on pretty
Just
good.
sliding over. Perfect.
There you go.
Perfect. Yep.
All right, so I got this one lined up. Got this one lined up for this notch here.
Yep, so we're all the way around. We got all our marks. We'll double check the crank one down here. And the first thing we're gonna do is come in here with our eccentrics. Now these are little idlers, but they're gonna be able to swivel. And if I swivel this guy over, it's gonna effectively change the length between my cam and my crank. Now what that's gonna let me do is slightly change my phasing on this bank relative to the crank if it's fixed. So I can use that to tune this bank in. And then once that's locked in, I can come over here and I can do the same thing with this guy, changing the effective length between these 2 points and dial this guy in so that everything is right on the money and this engine will run just like it came from the factory.
Pretty sweet, man.
So once those are locked down, we've rotated the engine over several times, tweaked it a little bit, we can set our tension, put everything back in.